Can you talk about Desert Storm and like what it was like getting deployed?
Yeah, I was terrified. When I first got the call, I mean, I just felt the full gravity of what it meant to leave, go, and you might not come back, right? I was freaking out. What I discovered a lot of things in Desert Storm. No one fights for their country when you're in war. You're fighting for your brother or sister to come back home. You have a job to do. And if you don't do the job, then people can die. So you're laser focused. So that's why when people come back from war, they don't come back the same way, because the pressure is so great. It's just not a natural way to operate. And I don't know if you come all the way back down. My wife said when I came back, it took about 8 months for me to get back to kind of quote unquote normalcy.
When Biden made the decision to remove United States troops from Afghanistan, did you feel like your progress had been lost, or did you feel like you still accomplished a lot while you were there?
What I did while I was there was I built relationships with these people. Like, they were my friends. And as soon as that word came through, my phone like blew up because they have my number. And they wanted to leave Afghanistan. They asked for help to leave. So it's sad, but I had an opportunity on International Women's Day to talk to all of the women in the Afghan Air Force and tell them why I thought it was so important to incorporate women into their military. And even if that helped a few of the women get through life right now, I hope that helped. Because I still talk to my interpreter. I heard from her yesterday. She is one of those women that she's 24 years old. And she learned English. She was encouraged to go to work by her brothers and her dad. And now that life has changed, she can't leave the house. And so she calls me and she talks to me about the feelings. It breaks my heart.
After those two, like, pretty traumatic events, how did you, I guess, maintain motivation to just keep pushing forward?
Yeah, it was tough. So there's the third event, November 4th. Our lieutenant, right? So like our boss, our GM, our captain, he was on a roof placing sandbags. There was some machine gun fire that spooked him and he fell off the roof, fell on his head and snapped his neck. So I heard the commotion. I ran up there, seeing him there, gave him CPR. I remember like he was like thirsty. So when you get thirsty, you have the crust on the side of your mouth. I remember the crust of his mouth was on my mouth because I was giving him CPR. I could feel like a step in his neck from where he fell, and he died instantly. Name's Mark Chelina. So it was tough, right? And then we had to we had our own combat replacements that came in to try to fill the shoes of these people, right? So like full circle, got to experience both sides of this tough encounter.
You said you left basic training when you were 18. So did you experience like 9/11 while you were there?
So 9/11 happened when I was at my first command, and I was getting dressed for work, and I turned on the TV and I saw that it had happened, and I just had no idea what was going on. And I went into the galley, and as I walked into the galley, it was just complete silence, and everybody was looking up at the TV with wide eyes. And the second plane hit in real time as we're watching it, and we just had no idea. We had no idea what was going on. And I was 20 years old, and it was like, okay, this is a totally different world. And, kids nowadays, they don't know what it was like prior to 9/11. And people who are younger have no idea what it was like prior to 9/11. But it certainly was an entirely different world.
I had never had any desire to join the military. My only motivation was really to just have a paid ticket out of my hometown. So it was never part of my identity. I was the last person that I ever would have imagined joining the military, let alone everybody else around me. So I guess even once I went through the whole process of basic training and all of that, no matter how hard I tried to drink the Kool-Aid, it just wouldn't settle in me to where it felt like this was authentically part of my identity. But I realized there was this idea of a soldier that I had in my mind that I simply was not. But in that, I had found, a different part of me in it.
My dad's very stoic, and so he doesn't really show a lot of emotion. But, seeing him After I'd come back, he, for the first time in his life said that he loved me, which was very touching. So it was good. The experience definitely helped us say things that we otherwise would not have said.
I was wondering if you would like to speak about what it's like to be a woman in the military.
I think for being women or just being different from the norm and being willing to think outside the box is going to be an upward battle, because you're working within an organization that is very traditional, has set rules, and anything that you're going to be doing is going to be looked at as you're kind of pushing the boundaries in one way or another. So one of the experiences that I had walking around with my dad, who had a Naval Academy dad hat on, he got thanked for his service. He told the person that thanked him that he never served, but that his daughter did. The guy looked at me and kind of just snubbed his nose at me and walked away. So that's half of it, but the other half is all of the wonderful people that are just advocating for some of the underrepresented voices. Like I said, there's a whole movement of doing both, of how can we start to prove that you can be an Olympic bobsled champion and a Marine Corps officer at the same time? How do you be a social media influencer and also be taken seriously in the Navy at the same time? It's entirely possible. And I think that's the niche that being a woman kind of started to open the doors for more voices, men and women, to start to speak up of, hey, we don't necessarily want to do things the traditional way. We can still uphold the same values and standards, but we're going to show you how to do things a little bit differently. So it's not all bad. It's not all good. It was a unique experience in itself, and it just really formed me to be who I am today.
What were your parents' opinions on you make this decision?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? They were a little bit crestfallen, right? It was a hard decision, right? I grew up in an affluent neighborhood. Not many of my peers are joining the military. Most are going to big name colleges and have these big jobs, right? But I'm most bucking the trend, right? So they were scared. The people were going overseas, we were going to war, so they knew that was in the cards. But they understood I was very headstrong. They knew there's not much they could do to kind of persuade me away from what I wanted to do. So they supported me through what I needed, but they weren't happy with my choices. They're accepting what I had to do.
I knew before I joined the Marine Corps that I wanted to be a Huey door gunner, not any other aircraft, not fixed wing, not another helicopter, nothing else. Because when I first walked into the recruiter station, I said, sign me up, I want to be Force Recon. And they laughed at me, and I looked at them and I said, no, you don't know me. Trust me. I can do this. Well, they ended up having to sit me down and explain to me that at that time, females were not allowed in combat MOSs. So I calmed down and I went back and I said, okay, I'm not the person that wants to sit at a desk. I'm joining because I want to join the fight. What's the most combative position that I could have? So there was this old gunnery sergeant who stepped out of the back office and he was like, well, you could be a Huey door gunner. So I was like, cool, what's that? He explained to me the type of helicopter and how combative it was and what I would be doing, that I would be operating a machine gun while hanging outside of a helicopter. And this type of helicopter, the missions were to be attack. I didn't want any of the other ones. I wanted an attack helicopter, and this was the one. So they said there were no spots available that they could give me on the East Coast. But if I went to boot camp, open contract, I could graduate, honor graduate, which is the #1 graduate in my class. I could choose any MOS I wanted. So I did. I left for boot camp, open contract, and I fought and I became the honor graduate. When I was graduating boot camp, the company gunnery sergeant came down and told me that there were no spots for Huey crew chief to give me at boot camp, and she sent me to MCT. So I checked in with the master gunnery sergeant at MCT, and he said, I don't care if you were honor graduate at their school. You want that job, you get honor graduate out of my school. I was like, oh man, all right, cool. Challenge accepted. So it came down to the last gun test. It was me and this one other guy, and I scored higher than him, so I got honor graduate. So the master gunnery sergeant was able to assign me to go be a crew chief, but still not Huey's. This story continues. So when I graduated my school in Pensacola, my aircrew school, the gunny there was a Huey door gunner, and he was running the school. And he looks at all of the guys and he says, 46s or Hueys. They make their choice. 46s gunny, 46s or Hueys. Hueys gunny, 46s or Hueys. He looks at me and he goes, 46s. And he starts to write on his paper. I said, excuse me, gunny, but I was told if I graduate, honor graduate, which I did, I get to choose my platform. He said, no, you're 46s. I said, I want Hueys, gunny. And he looked at me and he goes, you dig your own grave. And he wrote me down Hueys. So I'll never forget that. I mean, I know it's quite a long story, but it was such a battle for me to get to the fleet and to finally become a Huey door gunner.
Yeah, that's a really great story.
When I look back at it, I think I learned so much going into the service. I wasn't ready to go to college. I needed that discipline, and I got it in the service. I needed to be told, look, you're not going to get everything you want. And nobody is going to make you happy. You have to make yourself happy. So I think everybody should have at least 2 years after I work. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but
Yeah. All right. Well, if there's anything else you'd like to add, feel free to share it.
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
so much.